Afternoon. National Assembly for Wales is now in session, and the first item this afternoon, questions to the First Minister. And question one is Julie Morgan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What discussions has the First Minister had with the Prime Minister about further devolution to Wales?
Well, I wrote to the Prime Minister on the 6th of October, emphasising the importance of establishing a bilateral process to take forward devolution in Wales. I've not yet received a reply.
I thank the First Minister for that response, and I welcome the announcement of the four parties meeting together in Westminster to try and find a common solution. But has he been able to persuade the Prime Minister that unless he gives Wales the same level of funding as Scotland or Northern Ireland, any proposal to devolve income tax to Wales will lock Wales into permanent underfunding?
It's absolutely correct to say that any proposals, or the current proposals indeed, for devolving income tax would lock in that underfunding. And there are, of course, discussions that will continue to be ongoing between ourselves and the UK Government and the other administrations in order for that position to be rectified.
Paul Davies.
Diolch Llywydd. Prif Weinidog, chi wedi wneud...
First Minister, you made it clear that whichever powers are offered to Scotland, you believe that Wales should be offered the same. Now then, it's possible that powers for welfare could be offered to Scotland. Would you therefore be willing to accept these responsibilities in Wales?
It would depend on the funding available, because as with all things in this area, it's exceptionally important that we consider how much funding would be available. As a point of principle, I don't see any benefit to the devolution of the welfare system. I think it distributes money across the whole of Britain, and this isn't something that's a priority for us as a government.
Lle Griffith.
Diolch Llywydd. Prif Weinidog,
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, many people are of course concerned to what extent the debate on Wales will be some sort of footnote to the discussion on Scotland. Can you tell us to date to what extent you think the Prime Minister has been true to true to his word that Wales will be at the heart of those debates?
I'm not sure whether the member means myself or Prime Minister Cameron. Well, yes, having said that he said that Wales will be a central part of the discussions, but there's no evidence of that to date. I have written to him and reminded him of his words, but at the moment I would imagine that he's not going to keep his promise.
First Minister David Cameron recently said that there will be no funding change to the way Wales is currently funded. There seems to be an argument more to do with the politics between the Conservative Party and UKIP. Do you share the concerns some of us have that the Prime Minister does not fully understand the consequence of the Scottish referendum and the need for fundamental constitutional change?
Well, he may understand that the situation has changed. By his words, he seems to give the impression that he understands it. What's important is what happens now. What is absolutely clear is that things cannot stay as they are. The old ways of doing things and the old structure of the union, they're dead. We need to build now the new union, a fair union, of course, one that balances autonomy with solidarity. And that's very much, I think, where we need to be in Wales. So, yes, the Prime Minister has said the right things, but let's see if he does the right thing.
John Griffiths.
Yes, another, I think, significant part of the debate around the Scottish referendum, First Minister, was the need to rebalance the economy in the UK and the central importance of that if we're to have a fairer UK that all parts of the UK can buy into and feel a valued part of. Has that been a part of the debate since the Scottish referendum amongst yourself and the other UK political leaders? And if not, will you make sure that it is a part of the debate as we move forward?
Yes, the issue is, of course, that this should be something that should be looked at as part of the convention process. There's no doubt that there's a huge emphasis on London and on the financial services that London provides. And there will be a need, as indeed what was the case years ago, where steps were taken to ensure that there was more balance in terms of public spending across the UK, in terms of UK government moving departments around the UK. I think that's an important part of any discussions that we have in the future regarding the constitutional structure of the UK itself.
Question two, Andrew Archie Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, will you outline your priorities for improving health outcomes in South Wales Central over the next 12 months?
Yes, our programme for government and Together for Health set out our priorities for improving health outcomes across Wales.
Thank you, First Minister, for that answer. Many of the waiting times in South Wales Central are disappointingly poor, to say the least. Diagnostic waits, for example, at the Heath Hospital, there are over 1,084 patients waiting in excess of 24 weeks, and in the Royal Glamorgan in Llantrisant, nearly 400 patients are waiting for over 24 weeks for diagnostic tests. Can you give any comfort to any of those patients, and indeed the clinicians who are working in a very challenging environment, as to how your government is seeking to tackle those unacceptably high waiting times in those two major hospitals in my electoral region?
Well, two things. First of all, of course, we've announced an extra £425 million into the NHS, and of course £6.5 million particularly for diagnostic services, and I'm sure will be of great interest to clinicians and patients alike, as we seek, as governments do across the whole of the UK, to meet ever-rising demand in the health service.
Christine Chapman.
Thank you. First Minister, we know that there is a need to improve mental health awareness amongst professionals in some parts of the health service. Will you therefore join with me in welcoming the work of Interlink, Rhondda Cynon Taff and his partners in developing training materials aimed at improving awareness of these issues amongst primary care staff in Cwm Taff to improve the health outcomes of their patients? And will the Welsh Government also look at the lessons that can be drawn from this and rolled out across other health authorities?
Yes, it's a very good project. It's captured the experiences of individuals with mental health problems, of course, and the use they have made of primary care mental health services in their part of Wales. It is, of course, a commendable project. It's a great example of the co-productive approach as well, of course, that we've supported in mental health service delivery. I'm sure that the Minister will give further consideration to the project itself, and I'm sure he will write to you with his observations on the project in due course.
Leanne Wood.
First Minister, the Valleys has some of the worst response times for ambulances to Category A calls in the country, and at the same time we're losing consultant services from our local general hospital, the Royal Glamorgan. How can you justify the removal of services from our district general hospitals while the ambulance service under this government's management continues to fail to reach its targets? And how can people in my area, in the valleys, be reassured that under these conditions they and those close to them will be safe?
By ensuring that health services are safe. People want to make sure when they arrive in hospital that they are treated by people with a suitable level of experience. That's what we're trying to do. In terms of the ambulance service, we are of course recruiting extra people into the ambulance service. Some 206 paramedics is the plan by the spring of next year, and many of those will of course be working within the valleys from west to east.
Elena Parrott.
Diolch Llywydd. Services at the Accident and Emergency Unit at the University Hospital of Wales, I think it's fair to say we're in a desperate condition this weekend, with the local health board tweeting patients not to attend, and a constituent of mine reporting that he waited 3 hours and 20 minutes with a bleeding head wound just to see a triage nurse, let alone to get any treatment or see a doctor. A 4-hour wait is sadly not uncommon at that particular accident and emergency, so please can you undertake to look into this as a matter of urgency? And how can you assure patients that following reorganisation, where critical care and accident emergency service is going to be curtailed, that situation in Cardiff is not going to get worse?
Well, first of all, I encourage the member, of course, with her constituents' permission, to provide some details if that's possible, so that can be investigated fully. A&E, of course, is a service that can be very difficult to predict. I'm aware, I'll give you an example of my own hospital, the Princess of Wales in Bridgend. I have seen ambulances queuing there at times. We had a week last Saturday at 8:30. There was nobody in the A&E department at all, which gives an indication how difficult it can be to plan for what is in effect an unscheduled service. Nevertheless, if those details can be provided to the Minister, I'm sure he will look at them in full detail.
Lynn Eagle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. A huge strategic error, their worst mistake in government, and unintelligible gobbledygook. Does the First Minister agree with the Tory frontbench's assessment of their own flagship NHS reforms?
Who am I to disagree with those who criticise themselves? I think sometimes it's perfectly legitimate, of course, to leader of the opposition likes to bellyache at the top of his voice at this point. He doesn't like what he's heard, but there we are. The reality of the situation is, of course, that the Conservatives like to take the moral high ground in this regard, and the Lib Dems, in fact. But we see what's happening in England, and the member is entirely right to point out that the Tories themselves have pointed out the folly of having a reorganisation that has cost £5 billion in waste. If we want to look at what's happening in England, I can say that is not a good example for us to follow.
We now move to questions to the party leaders, and first this afternoon is the Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My question is about matters relating to Wales. First Minister, we all know about what the tragic consequences can be of failures in children's services. Awful events in Rochdale, for example, are a harrowing example. Can you be...
Excuse me, we don't need explanation. Would you carry on with your question, please, about Wales?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can you be confident, First Minister, that such unacceptable failures will not occur in Wales in the coming years, especially in the context of significant cuts to children's services?
Well, can I, first of all, express some relief that the Leader of Plaid Cymru is not asking me about my party's vote Westminster, which she often does when she asks questions, but she asked the question about children's services. She refers, I suspect, to the Children's Commissioner for Wales's report. What I can say to her, of course, that supporting children and young people and protecting their rights and well-being is at the very heart of what we wish to do as a government. It's why our recent draft budget protected funding for children's social services and our Flying Start programme, while, of course, funding to support vulnerable children was also maintained. And our commitment to invest in the future of our young people was also reflected, of course, in the budget agreement with the Liberal Democrats, which saw an increase in the pupil deprivation grant and an extension of the scheme to children under 5 years old.
I'm grateful to you, First Minister, for looking at the Children's Commissioner's report yesterday. He highlighted very serious concerns in that report, and he specifically highlighted the potential impact of cuts to children's services. Do you agree with the Children's Commissioner that there is a threat to children's services?
No, I don't. It's for each local authority, of course, to make sure that children's services are properly funded in each area in Wales. But nevertheless, coming back to our draft budget, there are significant protections there for children's services and, of course, extensions in terms of helping children with regard to for example, to the pupil deprivation grant.
First Minister, protecting budgets does not equate to protecting services, and it does not equate to protecting children, and that has been evidenced by the Children's Commissioner, among others. You appear to lay responsibility for the implementation of your cuts at the door of local authorities. Does the Welsh Government, do you, as First Minister, take your responsibility for child protection, or have you washed your hands of that responsibility?
Well, not in the slightest, nor is there any evidence at all that that is the case. And I do regret that particular question. As I said to the leader of, she's doing the same thing as the leader of the Conservatives. What I say to the Leader of Plaid Cymru is this: these are difficult financial times that we live in. We have taken a principled decision to protect funding for children's social services and the Flying Start programme, and of course to support vulnerable children. We believe that is the right thing to do, and we expect local authorities who deliver these services on the ground to deliver the level of service that people would expect. It's right to say that we would not want to see in Wales what has happened in some parts of England.
Now it's Andrew Archie-Davis' turn.
Thank you.
Standing up and not sitting down.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Over the weekend, First Minister, there was a full-blown exercise into how the health services would operate under the Ebola situation if it arrived here in these islands. Thankfully, we haven't had no cases, but nothing can be taken for granted. What has the Welsh Government deduced from its participation in that exercise, and indeed what has the health service in general deduced from it?
Well, first of all, of course, it makes perfect sense to cooperate with the appropriate bodies in England and Scotland in this regard, as GB is an infection control area. We make that absolutely clear. In terms of Ebola, the risk of an outbreak of Ebola in Wales remains very low. There's been so far one imported case of Ebola in the UK, not in Wales, but in the UK as a whole. We have, of course, together with Public Health Wales, been preparing for potential cases now for several months. Training for NHS Wales staff is already underway. NHS Direct Wales has an algorithm and has had an algorithm in place for assessing potential cases since September. Each local health board has initial treatment facilities and the necessary protection equipment to deal with anyone that's suspected to be suffering from Ebola. There are posters on display in ports and airports in Wales as well. And of course, we're working closely, as people would expect, with the UK government in order to deal with Ebola as an issue that we may face in the future. On that basis, then, I'm confident that we're doing as much as we can at this stage, and indeed all administrations within the GB are doing that in order to meet this threat.
Thank you for that detailed answer, First Minister, and I think people will be assured that certain measures have been put in place. But as I understand it, if a case is identified, the patient would be transferred to one of 4 hospitals designated in England to deal with this specific issue. What plans are in place, though, for the initial diagnosis and obviously containment within a district general hospital in Wales before a transfer would occur? I agree with you wholeheartedly. We shouldn't play it up, but it's a very real risk that people do need to understand and be aware of.
Well, can I say that the Royal Free Hospital in London is the main identified treatment centre for all confirmed UK cases of Ebola, including, obviously, Wales. There are 2 beds immediately available should any confirmed UK cases occur, and also additional capacity has been identified in order to deal with other cases should they occur. A patient's needs, of course, will need to be assessed on a case-by-case basis, but the intention will be for any patients identified in Wales, presenting therefore in Wales, to be transferred then to the Royal Free Hospital, and the process for agreeing a suitable care pathway, including that transfer to the Royal Free, is in place.
First Minister, obviously North America in Dallas was the first case that happened in America, and I think if most people said where it would occur in America, they wouldn't have pinpointed Dallas as being the place where that case would have been identified. We have 3 flights a day into Cardiff Airport via Schiphol. Schiphol is a major gateway for connections to the parts of Africa that do have an incidence of Ebola. I appreciate there's greater emphasis on airports and entry points in the southeast of England, but has any consideration been given to any screening measures or general awareness measures that would need to be taken at Cardiff Airport, given the frequency of flights that do come out of Schiphol, as I said, 3 times a day?
Yes, and the Schiphol flights are always identified as those flights that will bring in people from around the world. That much is true. Of course, it's for the Department of Transport and Border Force to decide how people are regulated as they come in through Cardiff Airport. They're not within the control of the Welsh Government. That said, of course, discussions continue to occur between Public Health Wales and those involved in dealing with civil contingencies. So far, Cardiff Airport hasn't been directed to carry out any additional screening, but they are working closely with the relevant organisations to ensure that they remain compliant should any changes occur in the future. And I can say that Cardiff Airport is also reviewing its infectious disease plans in readiness for any potential threat.
We now move to the Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, 6 months ago I asked you what steps your government was taking to tackle the significant increase in the number of children and young people waiting more than 14 weeks to access child and adolescent mental health services in Wales. In reply, you told me that the Health Minister is looking to make sure that we provide the services that make sure we don't have those long waiting lists. Are you now sure that those services exist?
Well, it's something the Minister I know is dealing with and something that he's exceptionally keen to move forward with. We look, of course, with interest at what was announced in the Liberal Democrat conference, the policy that was announced there. In Wales, we have already had a plan in place, I think for some years now, to deal with children's mental health issues, and of course we would look at whatever ideas emerge elsewhere in the UK to see how they can be applied to Wales.
First Minister, back in March, the number of young people waiting more than 14 weeks had quadrupled in the space of the year, and I'm sure the Health Minister is very keen indeed to make progress, but actually the figure has risen by a quarter since March, and there are now nearly 1,000 young vulnerable people waiting more than 14 weeks to access treatment. Now, child health experts agree that it's crucial to intervene as early as possible to get the best results for patients. When can parents and young people be assured of timely access to treatment that I'm sure all would agree is vital?
Well, the extra money, of course, it will be made available to the NHS. We would expect the local health boards to ensure that where there are particular pressures, that those pressures are dealt with, and that would, of course, include dealing with any issues that arise in the area of children's mental health.
First Minister, as you say, your government has been ahead of the game by setting the 14-week treatment target. The issue is When will your government achieve its goals? Yesterday, the Children's Commissioner raised serious concerns about the ability of children and young people to access services, and one of the reasons for that is a lack of specialists across Wales. Now, in March, you told me you had a recruitment programme which was addressing those issues. Are you confident today that your recruitment programme is working and we have the right number of staff in the right locations to ensure that your target is met?
Well, in terms of recruitment generally across Wales, I am indeed confident that the recruitment campaign is working. In terms of vacancies filled, we are above the last count 95%. So there's no huge difficulty in terms of filling those vacancies, although there are particular difficulties in some parts of Wales where it can be difficult to recruit in some areas the further away you go from the big urban centres. That's been an old problem that many governments have had to deal with. I do expect that local health boards should have in place the appropriate level of treatment. Nobody can be content with the situation where waiting lists increase, and this government is no different from any other government in that regard. But of course, the extra money has been made available, and I would expect that money now to make a positive difference to the situation that the leader of the Liberal Democrats has alluded to.
We now move back to questions on the paper, and question 3 is Sandy Mewis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, will you provide an update on Welsh Government investment to detect diabetes-related eye damage?
Yes, in September, the Diabetic Retinopathy Screening Service Wales received an investment of £561,000 for the replacement of its 34 digital retinal cameras, and that's in addition, of course, to the £6 million core funding that's provided to that service.
Thank you. As Chair of the Cross-Party Vision Group, I know that the eye care sector value the diabetic retinopathy screening service that's available in Wales. But can I be assured that those who need this new technology will be made aware of it and also be able to access it in the 3 centres where the high-tech cameras are located from wherever they live, and that the mobile services already presented in communities will remain?
Well, can I say that the additional finance is being made available to replace all the current cameras in use? I can give the member that assurance. And secondly, in terms of awareness, every eligible registered person with diabetes in Wales is invited for retinal screening on an annual basis, and 2 filed digital images of the scan are retained. So in doing that, of course, we seek to ensure that those who need to have the scan receive the information in order for that to happen.
Darren Miller.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, it is indeed an excellent service which is provided in terms of diabetic retinopathy screening. I was very pleased to hear your response. The problem that I have been made aware of from the RNIB is that very often when a problem is identified as a result of screening and people are referred then on to secondary care for a consultant appointment, is that some people in Wales are waiting far too long than they ought to be, and as a result of that losing their sight on occasions. Can you give us some assurance that this is a matter which will receive some attention from the Welsh Government in order that people can have equal access to urgent referral appointments as and when they require them?
Well, yes, I mean, there's no evidence that people have to wait so long that the condition that they have deteriorates to a point where it cannot be resolved. But I can say that in terms of primary care, we did announce £600,000 to enable optometrists to manage patients in the community in September last month. And of course, we also allocated £1 million of funding recently to eye care through the Health Technologies and Telehealth Fund. That will establish IT systems across primary and secondary care to improve patient care, of course, and of course to ensure that there is more capacity in hospitals, and that will help to ensure an ever faster throughput of patients who need this help.
Question 4, Gwenda Thomas.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on the Ystalyfera Cluster Schools Tanio'r Ddraig Language Charter?
I'd like to congratulate Neath Port Talbot Local Authority and especially Ysgol Gyfun Ystalyfera on the launch of their language charter, Tanio'r Ddraig, and I'd like to thank the member for Neath's supportive words at the launch of the charter itself. The development is very important in terms of supporting pupils to use their Welsh outside lessons. It's an old problem where they tend to use Welsh in the classroom but not out with the classroom, and it's very important we have such schemes in place to help to ensure that young people do use the Welsh language outside classrooms.
Thank you for that reply, First Minister. It was a great pleasure to be present at Ysgol Gyfun Ystalyfera in my constituency on the occasion of the launch of the Language Charter. And we heard about the help and support they'd received from Gwynedd Council. And it was also inspirational to listen to the contribution of the poet Mererid Hopwood, and I quote, she said that we should inspire our children and young people to use their Welsh language in every aspect of their lives. Do you agree that it will be of great value to extend the Charter to other schools?
Certainly, yes. We need to consider this method so that schools can support their pupils in making greater use of the Welsh language. I understand that Ceredigion, Carmarthenshire and local authorities in the South East are considering adopting a similar scheme, and it's very important that this is considered throughout Wales in order to ensure that young people do use the Welsh language.
Question 5, David Rees.
Will the First Minister make a statement on funding for research and development in Wales for the remainder of the Assembly term?
Yes, well, research, development and innovation are priority themes of the next round of European ERDF funding. We are currently finalising our new programmes. They'll support companies and universities to undertake R&D to ensure that Wales, of course, remains the best possible environment for the development of R&D in the future.
Well, thank you for that answer, First Minister. And as you well know, the second campus of Swansea University, the new Innovation Science Campus, is actually located within my constituency, and it's progressing well. And it actually will be a great opportunity for research in an academic arena, which will actually also involve global organisations working with them. However, I'm sure you agree that it's important to benefit from that research, and areas such as Baglan Bay Energy Park could actually be part of that beneficial process. Now, we do not have an enterprise zone within the Swansea Bay area, so what support can the Welsh Government offer to organisations that wish to relocate or locate in these areas surrounding the university campus to be able to build upon that research and take on the innovation and development processes?
The member quite rightly points out that the Fabian Way campus is in Aberavon, and I know it's something he's personally very proud of. I understand that full well. Two things I'd say to him. First of all, we believe we offer one of the best R&D and capital investment packages of support in the UK for Welsh-based businesses and inward investors. Firstly, to invest in R&D to exploit commercial opportunities. In terms of funding for business-led R&D and innovative projects, in terms of collaborating with universities to look at new research and also to accelerate knowledge transfer to new products and processes. The member, of course, will be aware of the A4B programme. In terms of Baglan Energy Park, it's a premier site. We already have world-class investment that's been brought there, several companies. It offers, for example, on-site power generation, which is extremely competitive in terms of the offer that is made, and I believe it's taken together with the Fabian Way campus and the developments elsewhere in Swansea Bay, if I can say that we are developing an exceptionally important area of job creation in the future.
Jonathan Saunders.
Thank you. Will the First Minister clarify how the Welsh Government is actually supporting the digital technology sector, especially with their funding for research and development up until the end of this Assembly term?
Well, I think I gave the member the answer earlier on in terms of the R&D package that is available, in terms, for example, of A4B and what that can do in terms of digital innovation, and of course Superfast Cymru, which as a digital package is exceptionally important in ensuring that Wales is connected at the right speeds to the rest of the world.
Rhys Iorwerth.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Is the First Minister aware of the excellent work being done in the Biocomposites Centre, which is part of Bangor University, but actually is within my constituency at Monad? Does the First Minister agree that it's important that research funding and European funding continues to be invested in that centre so that we in Wales can continue to be in the vanguard in terms of developing materials through biotechnology for use in manufacturing and industry?
Well, of course, it is important that we ensure that we invest in the future. And I'm not aware of the particularly individual example that you've given, but of course we are committed to ensuring that the Menai Science Park grows in the future, and of course that was part of the agreement between his party and the government to ensure that that happens, and of course it's being led most innovatively by the former member of Ynys Môn constituency.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, in my own region of Mid and West Wales, there are a number of small businesses that are seeking partnerships with academic institutions, particularly to bring products such as medical tools and treatments to the market. And a recent example is Alzheim, which has been developing galantamine from stressed daffodils to actually address the onset of Alzheimer's disease. And in that context, First Minister, what can be done to facilitate the ways in which these partnerships are developed to make them less onerous for particularly small businesses that have capacity issues and that might prevent them actually bringing these things to the market?
Hugely important and innovative technology. I come back to the point I made earlier on about the package that we offer to enable businesses to work with universities. I think it's fair to say that 10 or so years ago, that link wasn't really there. Now, of course, it's widely accepted that universities should be able to develop their knowledge working with businesses so that businesses can say to universities what they require, and that universities then are able, in terms of business relationship, to provide the expertise. And so the collaborative approach that we've encouraged between universities and business through the R&D package that we've developed will, I hope, be of assistance to the business that you mentioned.
Question 6, Mohammed Asghar.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. What action will the Welsh Government take to improve ambulance responses time in South Wales East before the onset of winter pressure, First Minister?
Yes, the Deputy Minister launched an NHS Wales and Social Care Winter Planning Forum on the 3rd of October, and he was impressed by the commitment demonstrated by all those who are required to be on board to ensure ambulance response times improve. The Trust has published its winter plan for 2014 to 15. We expect LHBs to publish theirs in the course of this month. And of course, as I mentioned earlier on, new paramedics have been recruited in order to crew the ambulances.
Thank you very much for the reply, Minister. You will be aware of the latest ambulance emergency response figures in the Naibevan board area, which revealed just over half of ambulances responding to emergency calls arrive within 8 minutes. In June this year, Health Minister demanded urgent improvements within 3 months. What action will your government take to improve response time before winter weather adds to pressures on this service?
Well, I mentioned the 206 staff who will be appointed by April 2015. Many of them, of course, will be based in the South East. 12 have become operational in the past fortnight, 9 of whom will be based in the South East. And of course, the ambulance service must use this additional capacity to demonstrate improvement before the winter period begins. I can also inform the member that a further 18 qualified paramedics are due to be interviewed over the next fortnight.
Kirsty Williams.
First Minister, your government has acknowledged that performance of the Ambulance Trust in South East Wales is one area of particular difficulty. The impact that has on my constituents is that ambulances that are based at ambulance stations in Powys are routinely called to the South East to answer calls or get caught up in the South East system as they're the nearest available crew. What can you do to increase capacity, especially in South East Wales, to ensure that ambulances based in Powys are able to cover the Powys area and therefore help meet targets in my particular constituency?
First of all, of course, members will be aware of the announcement made some months ago of investment in new vehicles. And of course, I draw the member back to the words I just used in terms of the number of paramedics, in terms of the increase that will occur, particularly not just in the South East, but around Wales, but particularly in the South East, which will help, of course, to, we trust, as far as the ambulance service is concerned, to improve the service.
Jocelyn Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, do you accept the responsibility for the ambulance response times in the South East? And I wonder what you would tell us what you intend to do about it if they continue to be unacceptable.
We are responsible for policy. The Ambulance Service Trust are responsible for operationally for providing that service. That's not to say, of course, that government can unlike the case in England, actually, but that government can say it's nothing to do with SGov. We understand that. And the issue then for us is, what are we doing? I come back to the point that I made earlier on, recruiting more paramedics and, of course, investing in new ambulances. It is up, of course, to the Ambulance Trust to make sure that operationally they meet the standards that the public would require.
Question 7, Mike Hedges.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What assessment has the Welsh Government made of the need to change the current NUT 2 and NUT 3 boundaries?
Well, the most recent review of nuts boundaries was undertaken in 2013, and through the ONS we will input into the next review, which is expected in 2016.
I thank the First Minister for that response. As the Williams Commission replicates the NUTS 3 structure, except for the need to merge Ynys and Gwynedd, will the Welsh Government be recommending this change? The NUTS 2 boundary has remained unchanged, except for minor local authority boundary changes since the start of Objective 1. Have the Government considered the repercussions of changing the boundaries, e.g. aligning with city regions?
Yes, particularly the need to ensure that we don't see authorities losing out potentially as a result of any realignment. Can I say that the Eurostat regulations define a minimum size of 800,000 for a NUTS 2 boundary, which would take it beyond, possibly the Swansea City region, maybe Cardiff as well. But despite that, the regulation favours using administrative divisions or aggregates of administrative divisions. So our understanding is that a city region can only be defined as a NUTS 2 area, or indeed a NUTS 3 area, if it's based on local authority administrative boundaries. So there has to be the creation of a city region as an administrative boundary, or some other way found of doing that.
William Graham.
The aim of the NUTS classification is to ensure that comparable regions appear at the same NUTS level, with population size a key indicator for statistical comparability for the allocation of structural funds. Would the First Minister indicate what key projects he envisages to enable Wales to be no longer eligible for future structural funds?
Well, an emphasis, of course, on R&D, an emphasis, of course, on upskilling. We know full well that, and this is something I've heard many times talking to potential investors, is they want to be assured that Wales has the skills that are needed in order to attract investment in the future. The days of a low-wage, low-skill economy are, thankfully, long gone. And so emphasising the need to upskill our people to provide the flow of skills that investors need, particularly investors who bring high-salary, high-quality jobs, will be of paramount importance for the next few years.
Roger Lynn Thomas.
First Minister, whilst we qualify to receive funding from these structural funds, what is the Welsh Government doing creatively to look at the possible investment? I was at a seminar in Brussels last week speaking to the European Investment Bank, who say that they are very happy to look at the RDP as a means of investing in rural areas. Has the Welsh Government had any discussions with the European Investment Bank on this issue, particularly given the Government's decision to distribute a higher proportion of funding in the RDP than most others have done?
Well, I personally haven't had those discussions, but I'm sure the Minister could write to you to give her view. But of course, we have drawn down funding from the European Investment Bank, which is the Swansea campus, if I remember rightly, and that's been a benefit to the people of Wales. So if it's possible to draw more funding into rural development, I'm sure that it'll be possible to consider that.
Question 8, Anne Jones.
Make a statement on the impact on Wales of the UK Government's decision to cut the Independent Living Fund, please.
Well, the UK Government is set to close the ILF on the 30th of June of next year and transfer the responsibility for supporting recipients in Wales to the Welsh Government. To ensure recipients can continue to live independently in the community, we are consulting on a range of options for providing for their future support.
Thank you very much for that answer, First Minister. It seems that not a week goes by without the Tory government, UK Tory government, finds a way to attack the most vulnerable in our societies. This regressive decision by the DWP to cut funding of the Independent Living Fund means there's 1,600 severely disabled people in Wales could lose a vital support which enables them to live independently. And if they want to say anything to my left there, perhaps they should talk to their people in the UK government about the regressive position that they're making. And can I say thank you on behalf of those disabled people in my constituency who may have the opportunity to take part in the fund that the Welsh Government will be setting up, which shows once again that Wales does stand up for the people here, that we will look to mitigate the regressive decisions of the UK Tory government. Will you join me in condemning the UK Tory government and the Liberal Democrat who are supporting them in these vicious attacks on the most vulnerable in our society?
Well, the UK government do have a history of devolving power without resources. We saw that with council tax benefits, where there was a top slice of 10% for no apparent reason that was taken off. And so they have had a track record, which I hope will change, but a track record of devolving with and then keeping part of the money. An old trick in that regard. Now, I know that the UK government's announcement has caused anxiety amongst recipients over how their future support will be provided. I want to reassure them that we as a government are committed to ensuring that appropriate arrangements are in place in good time to meet their support needs when the ILF closes next year, and we're encouraging all those with an interest to take part in the consultation process so that we can find the best way forward for those most vulnerable people in our society.
Mark Isherwood.
Thank you. Well, when the Independent Living Fund was first established by coincidence under a Conservative government, it was in a world before direct payments, when social care was designed by local authorities rather than individuals. And the changes now reflect development in how we provide social care to disabled people so that they can live independent lives. And certainly the Scottish Parliament has acknowledged that current funding levels have been transferred from the Treasury to them. I presume the same is in Wales. Why, therefore, given your government's pledge to transform social care and empower individuals through the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, are you not proposing to ring-fence the Independent Living Fund to protect support for the independence of anyone who needs social services support?
The member is absolutely right to say that his party are changing the way in which to support our most vulnerable people by cutting the money available to our most vulnerable people. That is what he means by change. I can say that we are at this moment consulting on the best way forward, and we will make sure that any changes that are difficult or impossible or unmanageable for our people in Wales, that those changes are dealt with in a positive way for them. And that is our pledge, and the pledge I've made to the member for the Vale of Clwyd earlier, but it will not involve beginning with a standpoint that the first thing we must do is cut support to the most vulnerable. That is not what we stand for as a government.
Lindsay Whittle.
Well, First Minister, I agree with everything that Anne Jones, the member for Rhyl, has actually said in this chamber. Sorry, I know you're from Rhyl. In light of the potentially damaging welfare decisions being made at present by the British government, what efforts will you be making as First Minister to press for the Welsh Assembly to have powers over welfare to be devolved to this Welsh government in order that you can protect the 1,600 most severely disabled people here in Wales, please?
I know the member is a strong and lifelong supporter of Rhyl Football Club, but I'm sure even she would acknowledge that she represents the Vale of Clwyd, as the member's acknowledged. The issue of welfare benefits is this, is it not? That the welfare system is a way of transferring money around GB and in practice UK to areas where it is most needed. The danger for us in Wales is to see devolution of welfare with a resource that is inadequate for what we would require. Having the power is one thing, but if you haven't got the money to do what you want to do, then the power is effectively useless. And these are the issues that we must balance, all parties must balance over the coming months in terms of examining what should and shouldn't be devolved.
Question 9, Rhys Apiorwith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on the agenda to provide better public services in Anglesey?
Well, our plans for reforming public services were published on the 8th of July.
Thank you. Is the First Minister aware of the concerns on Anglesey that a merger with Gwynedd could lead to job losses on a large scale? Is he also aware that Anglesey Council has invited applications for voluntary redundancy for all of its staff because of the need to save £20 million now? And does the First Minister therefore agree that it looks like a lose-lose situation for Anglesey at present because of the unreasonable cuts that the Council is expected to make?
Well, every council in Wales is in the same position. It's up to Ynys Môn County Council as regards what they do about it. We as government would not be in favour of compulsory redundancies. and there have been arrangements in place in order to ensure that people can exit from their posts voluntarily, and it has happened in the government itself. It's a bit odd perhaps to make that offer to every person working for the council, but we do know that Anglesey has had a very difficult history in the way in which the council was run, and of course we know that we must ensure that local authorities in future are large enough in order to ensure that they can deliver the services that everybody would wish to see without, of course, becoming excessively large. And that is one of the recommendations of the Williams Commission. But what is obvious is that the status quo is not an option.
Well, better public services on Anglesey across North Wales and beyond would increasingly depend on co-production with the third sector agencies like credit unions. And of course Thursday is International Credit Union Day. I'm sure you'll join me in celebrating that. How is the Welsh Government working with ABCOL to deliver sustainability to credit unions on their expansion programme aligned with the Welsh Government funding programmes to deliver what the Scottish Parliament at their event to celebrate International Credit Union Day heard from American credit unions grown to provide a full range of services to people from all walks of life whilst retaining their community focus on cooperative values.
The member is very...
Anglesey? Yes, this is a question on Anglesey. First Minister.
Yes, I'm not aware of the situation regarding credit unions on Anglesey, but nevertheless, of course, we've been supportive of credit unions across Wales in years gone by, working with organisations such as the Wales Cooperative Centre, if I remember. The member has mentioned Scotland twice now. Are we to see an alliance between the SNP and the Conservatives, given the warm words that he has had for the Scottish Parliament?
Thank you, First Minister.